The silent ballroom, the crystal chandeliers, cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of the Grand Meridian Hotel, where Seattle's most influential figures gathered for the annual Children's Future Foundation Gala. Sophia Chen adjusted her black vest and smoothed her hair back into its practical ponytail, balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes as she navigated through clusters of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. At 28, she had perfected the art of invisibility, moving seamlessly through these glittering events without drawing attention to herself. She paused near the auction stage, where a commanding figure stood behind the podium. Marcus Sterling, the enigmatic founder of Sterling Technologies, rarely made public appearances. But tonight, he served as the event's keynote speaker. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit immaculate, yet something about his posture suggested a man uncomfortable with the spotlight despite his success. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying easily across the hushed ballroom. "Tonight we've raised impressive sums for children's education. But before we celebrate, I have a question." He paused, scanning the sea of expectant faces. Then, switching to fluent Mandarin, he asked, 什么比金钱更有价值? What is more valuable than money? The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia watched as hundreds of guests shifted uncomfortably, understanding neither the language nor the expectation behind the question. She saw confusion flicker across faces, followed by the careful neutrality of people afraid to appear ignorant. Board members exchanged glances. Society wives studied their jewelry. Even the mayor, seated at the head table, simply smiled and nodded as if the question hadn't been asked at all, but Sophia understood. She had grown up in her grandmother's house, where Mandarin flowed as naturally as English. She had studied international architecture at the University of Washington, dreaming of designing buildings that would bridge cultures. Those dreams felt like a lifetime ago, but the language remained as the silence stretched uncomfortably long. She found herself speaking without conscious thought. "I Siwan," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Love and hope." The words seemed to carry in the acoustically perfect ballroom. Marcus's gaze snapped to her corner of the room, searching. Around her, guests turned with curiosity and mild annoyance, wondering who had dared to break the silence. Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized what she had done. She clutched her tray tighter, fighting the urge to flee. Marcus stepped closer to the edge of the stage, his dark eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. For a moment that felt eternal, their gazes locked across the sea of people. His expression shifted from surprise to something deeper, recognition, perhaps, or intrigue. "Love and hope," he repeated in English, his voice thoughtful. "Yes, because without them, all our success becomes meaningless." He paused, still looking in her direction. "Thank you for reminding us what truly matters." The applause that followed felt different, somehow more genuine than the polite clapping that typically punctuated these events. But Sophia barely heard it. She was thinking about her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, asleep at home with Mrs. Rodriguez, the kind neighbor who babysat during her evening jobs. Lily, who asked why Mommy worked so much, but never got to keep the pretty dresses from the parties. Lily, who drew pictures of the buildings Mommy used to dream about creating as Marcus concluded his speech and the evening's festivities resumed. Sophia retreated to the service corridor, her heart still racing from the unexpected moment. She had worked dozens of these events over the past 3 years, perfecting the balance between earning enough to support her daughter while remaining invisible to the wealthy attendees. Tonight, somehow she had forgotten that cardinal rule. She was checking her phone for messages from Mrs. Rodriguez when a shadow fell across the hallway entrance. Marcus Sterling stood there, having somehow found his way past the security and event coordinators who typically guarded such boundaries between the servers and the served. "Excuse me," said his voice gentler than it had been at the podium. "I was hoping we could talk." Echoes of the past, the coffee shop on Pine Street, was a world away from the Grand Meridian's marble floors. Yet Marcus Sterling looked perfectly at ease in the worn leather booth across from Sophia. 3 days had passed since the gala, and she still couldn't quite believe she had agreed to meet him. The morning rush swirled around them, students with laptops, construction workers grabbing quick breakfast sandwiches, and the gentle hum of conversation that made honest words feel safer. "You're wondering why I sought you out?" Marcus said, wrapping his hands around his ceramic mug. His expensive watch caught the light, but everything else about him seemed deliberately understated. Today's Eanes? A simple sweater. No trace of the commanding presence from the ballroom. Sophia nodded, stirring honey into her tea. The thought had crossed my mind. "I'm sure you meet plenty of people who speak Mandarin, not many who understand the weight of the question." He leaned forward slightly. "When I asked what was more valuable than money, I wasn't looking for a philosophical debate. I was testing something." "Testing what?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Whether anyone in that room saw beyond the surface, whether anyone understood that true value isn't measured in dollars. He paused. "You answered without hesitation. Love and hope. Why those two things?" Sophia felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she thought about the path that had led her here. "Because I used to have grand dreams, and I learned the hard way that they don't mean anything if you have no one to share them with. No reason to believe tomorrow can be better than today." She hadn't meant to be so honest, but something about Marcus's directness invited the same in return. He waited, patient, and she found herself continuing. "I was studying architecture at U, international focus. I wanted to design sustainable housing for developing communities. Bridges that connected cultures literally and figuratively." She smiled ruefully. "I had this whole plan: finish my master's, work with firms in Singapore and Shanghai maybe. Start my own practice by 30. What changed, Lily?" The name came out softly, carrying all the love and complicated emotions of the past 6 years. "I met her father my senior year. David was charming, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. We moved in together, planned this beautiful future. When I got pregnant, we were both excited. We'd travel the world with our baby, show her all the places we'd work." Marcus watched her carefully, and she could see him processing the past tense. In her words, he left when Lily was 8 months old. She took a sip of her tea, using the motion to steady herself. She said he wasn't ready to be tied down, that parenthood felt like prison. He wanted the freedom to take a job in Dubai, to live the life we'd planned, just ... without us. The coffee shop noise seemed to fade around them. Marcus's expression had shifted to something Sophia couldn't quite read. Not pity, but understanding mixed with anger on her behalf. "So you put your dreams on hold." "I put my dreams in a different box," she corrected. "Architecture requires long hours, travel, networking events where you wine and dine clients. I had a 6-month-old baby and no family nearby except my grandmother, who was already struggling with her health. The math was simple. The catering work pays the bills. The catering work pays for Lily's daycare, our apartment, groceries, and the savings account where I put away $50 a month toward her college fund." Sophia met his eyes. "It's not the life I planned, but it's a good life. Lily is smart, and kind and curious about everything. She draws pictures of buildings and asks me to tell her about the places I studied. Some nights after she falls asleep, I still sketch designs for houses that might never exist." Marcus set down his mug. With deliberate care, "What if I told you there might be a way to do both? To provide for Lily and pursue architecture again? I'd say you don't understand how the world works for single mothers without trust funds or family money." The words came out sharper than she intended, and she immediately regretted them. "I'm sorry." "That was true," Marcus finished. "You're absolutely right. I don't understand that world, but I understand talent, and I understand potential being wasted." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. "This is the community center Sterling Technologies is funding in the International District. We broke ground last month, but we're not happy with the current architectural plan. It's functional, but uninspired. It doesn't serve the community it's meant to support." Sophia studied the image, her trained eye immediately seeing the problem's poor natural light. Inefficient use of space, no consideration for the cultural needs of the diverse neighborhood. The lead architect is experienced but doesn't understand. "The community," Marcus continued. "We need someone who sees beyond the blueprints, someone who understands that buildings should bring people together, not just house them. You're offering me a job based on one conversation. I'm offering you a consultation based on one answer: love and hope." That's exactly what this project needs. Marcus leaned back, giving her space to think. Part-time initially, enough to let you keep your current work while you get back into the field. We'd provide childcare assistance, flexible hours. Sophia felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not quite hope, but its cautious cousin. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because 3 nights ago, in a room full of Seattle's elite, only one person had the courage to speak truth. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Marcus's smile was gentle. And because sometimes the best business decisions are the ones that feel right in ways that have nothing to do with business. As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, Sophia walking toward the bus stop and Marcus toward his car, she found herself thinking about Lily's latest drawing. House with impossible spiraling towers and gardens growing from every window. Maybe some dreams once set aside could be picked up again. Maybe love and hope weren't just answers to philosophical questions, but foundations upon which new possibilities could be built. Bridges built on trust, the Sterling Technologies building, rose like a glass monument against Seattle's gray October sky, its clean lines reflecting Sophia's own architectural sensibilities. She stood in the lobby clutching her worn leather portfolio, watching employees move with purposeful confidence through the modern space. 6 weeks had passed since that coffee shop conversation, and she still felt like she was living someone else's life, Sophia. Lily's excited voice echoed off the marble walls as she skipped toward the elevator bank, her small hand firmly held by Mrs. Rodriguez. Today was Bring Your Child to Work Day, something Sophia had never imagined participating in during her catering years. Remember what we talked about? Sophia whispered to her daughter as they rode the elevator to the 15th floor. Indoor voice, stay close, and don't touch anything expensive, Lily finished with a grin. Mama, is Mr. Marcus really going to show me the robot room? It's called the Innovation Lab, sweetheart. Sophia smoothed Lily's curls, marveling at how naturally her daughter had adapted to these new circumstances. Children, she reflected, were remarkably resilient creatures. The architectural offices occupied the entire 15th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay. Sophia's workspace she still couldn't quite call it her office sat in the corner, surrounded by the evolving plans for the International District Community Center. What had started as a consultation had grown into something more substantial, though she couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a role she hadn't quite earned. There they are. James Park, Marcus's business partner, and the project's financial overseer, appeared at her cubicle with his usual warm smile. In his mid-30s, with an easy laugh and genuine interest in people, James had become an unexpected ally in navigating Sterling Technologies' corporate culture. And this must be the famous Lily. I'm 6, Lily announced proudly, holding up the appropriate number of fingers. Mama says you help make buildings that help people. That's exactly right. James crouched to Lily's eye level. Your mama is designing the most important building we've ever worked on. Want to see them? Model. As James led Lily toward the scale model of the community center, Sophia noticed Rebecca Walsh approaching from across the floor. Rebecca had been her study partner at UW, the friend who had gone on to fulfill the dreams Sophia had set aside. Now a successful architect with her own firm, Rebecca served as an external consultant on the project, a bridge between Sophia's interrupted past and uncertain present. The revised plans look incredible, Rebecca said, settling into the chair beside Sophia's desk. The way you've integrated the multi-generational spaces while maintaining its cultural accessibility, it's exactly what this neighborhood needs. Don't think the budget concerns are valid. Sophia gestured to the red-marked comments covering James's latest review. He's worried about the rooftop garden and the flexible community rooms. James worries about budgets because that's his job. But Marcus specifically said he wanted something transformational, not just functional. Rebecca studied her friend's face. You're second-guessing yourself again. Sophia sighed, watching Lily examine the tiny trees planned for the community center's courtyard. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing dress-up. 6 months ago, I was serving champagne at events like these. Now, I'm sitting in strategy meetings with department heads who've never had to choose between groceries and electricity bills. And that perspective is exactly why your designs work. a familiar voice said behind them. Marcus appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression Sophia had learned meant he'd been listening longer than he'd let on. "Good morning, Rebecca. Sophia, do you have a few minutes? Is there something I'd like to discuss?" They walked to Marcus's office. Surprisingly understated space, with more books than most people would expect from a tech executive. Lily had claimed the conference table, where she was drawing elaborate building designs, while Mrs. Rodriguez watched with patient amusement. "The mayor's office called yesterday," Marcus began, settling across from Sophia. "They want to fast-track the community center approval process, which means presenting to the City Planning Commission next month instead of next spring." Sophia felt her stomach drop. That's a significant acceleration of the timeline. "Is it also means you'd need to take the lead on the presentation? Full architectural responsibility, public speaking, media interviews?" Marcus leaned forward slightly. "I know it's a big step." "If you're not ready, she's ready," Rebecca interjected firmly. "Sophia, you know this project better than anyone. You've spent weeks in the neighborhood talking to families, understanding their needs. No one else can speak to the human element of this design." Sophia looked across the office at Lily, who had abandoned her drawing to press her face against the floor-to-ceiling windows, counting boats in the harbor below. The sight of her daughter in this space still felt surreal, a collision of worlds that shouldn't fit together but somehow did. "What if I mess this up?" she asked quietly. "What if the commission asks questions I can't answer, or points out flaws I didn't consider? This isn't just about my career anymore. It's about the community, about proving that Sterling Technologies made the right choice." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then moved to join Lily at the window. "Can I tell you something about failure?" he asked, addressing both mother and daughter. "Oh, I started 3 companies before Sterling Technologies. The first one lost my investors' money. The second one had a brilliant product that nobody wanted to buy. The third one succeeded just enough to teach me how much I still didn't know." "What happened then?" Lily asked, looking up at him with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Then I realized that failure wasn't the opposite of success. It was the teacher that success needed." Marcus glanced at Sophia. "The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes presenting to the commission. The question is whether you'll learn from them and build something better." Later that evening, as Sophia tucked Lily into bed in their small Capitol Hill apartment, her daughter's sleepy voice cut through the darkness. "Mama, do you like Mr. Marcus?" The question hung in the air, loaded with 6-year-old perception that often saw truths adults worked hard to hide. Sophia smoothed the covers, buying time. "He's been very kind to us, sweetheart. He's given Mama an important job." "That's not what I mean." Lily's eyes were serious in the dim light from the hallway. "Do you like him the way you liked Daddy before he went away?" Sophia's breath caught. In all their conversations about David's absence, Lily had never made such a direct connection between past and present. "Mr. Marcus and Mama are friends, Lily. Good friends who work together." "Okay," Lily said, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "I just don't want him to go away too." As Sophia sat in her living room later that night, surrounded by architectural plans and presentation notes, she found herself thinking about bridges, both the literal ones she'd once dreamed of designing and the metaphorical ones she was learning to build. Trust, she was discovering, was the most complex architecture of all. It required careful engineering, strong foundations, and the courage to believe that what you were building could bear the weight of hope. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's the presentation prep going? Remember, you're not just selling a building, you're showing them a community's dreams made tangible." She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Thank you for believing in me before I remembered how to believe in myself." Response came quickly. "That's what good partners do." Partners. The word carried implications that made her heart race and her practical mind raise warning flags in equal measure. But as she returned to her work, sketching refinements to the community center's entrance, Sophia found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, some bridges were worth the risk of building. When worlds collide, the Seattle Times headline blazed across Marcus's phone screen. "Tech billionaire's new romance from boardroom to single mom's heart." Below it, a grainy paparazzi photo showed him and Sophia leaving the International District. Community center site visit, Lily's small hand in his as they walked toward his car. Sophia stared at the image over his shoulder, her face pale in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the Sterling Technologies break room. Around them, the usual morning bustle had grown quieter, conversations dropping to whispers as employees pretended not to notice the tension radiating from their corner table. "How did they even know to follow us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We were reviewing construction specs, not ... Not what the photo suggests," Marcus finished grimly. He scrolled through the article, his jaw tightening with each paragraph. "Listen to this. Sources close to Sterling Technologies report that the relationship began when Chen, a former architecture student turned caterer, was hired for a consulting position that many industry experts consider beyond her qualifications." Oh God. Sophia buried her face in her hands. "They're making it sound like I slept my way into this job, like everything I've worked for is just ... a lie, which it isn't." Marcus reached across the table, then caught himself, glancing around at the curious faces pretending not to watch. "Sophia, you've earned every opportunity you've received. Your community center design is brilliant. The neighborhood focus groups love it. The planning commission presentation is next week, and you're completely prepared." But even as he spoke, Marcus's phone continued buzzing with calls from his publicist, board members, and reporters seeking comment. Across town, he knew his mother would be reading the same article over her morning coffee, her disapproval already forming into the sharp words she'd undoubtedly share at their weekly lunch. The break room door opened, and James Park entered, wearing the expression of someone bearing unwelcome news. "It's Marcus. We need to talk. Victoria's here." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. His mother rarely visited the office unannounced, and her timing today couldn't be coincidental. "I should go," Sophia said, already gathering her papers. "I have the site meeting with the contractors this afternoon, and stay." Marcus's voice was firm. "Whatever my mother has to say, you deserve to hear it directly." Victoria Sterling swept into the break room like a force of nature dressed in Chanel, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. At 65, she commanded attention through pure presence's skill honed through decades of navigating Seattle's social elite as the widow of tech pioneer Robert Sterling, Marcus. She acknowledged her son with a cool nod before turning to Sophia with appraising eyes. "Miss Chen, I presume. We haven't been formally introduced, though I feel I know quite a lot about you after this morning's reading material." "Mother, if you're here too, I'm here to discuss damage control," Victoria interrupted, settling into the chair across from them as if claiming territory. "The board is concerned. 3 members have already called this morning questioning Marcus's judgment. The Hartwell Foundation is reconsidering their partnership on the community center project." Sophia felt her stomach plummet. The Hartwell Foundation's support was crucial, not just for funding, but for the credibility that came with their endorsement. "Furthermore," Victoria continued, "David Kim from Channel 7 has been calling. Apparently, he's been investigating Miss Chen's background and has some rather interesting questions about her qualifications and how she obtained this position." The name hit Sophia like a physical blow. David Kim, not her daughter's father, but a journalist known for his aggressive investigative pieces. Still, hearing any variation of that name in this context made her hands tremble. "What kind of questions?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "The kind that suggest impropriety. The kind that implies Sterling Technologies hired an underqualified single mother because of a personal relationship rather than professional merit." Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact, surgical in its precision. "The kind that could destroy both your reputations and torpedo a community project that dozens of families are counting on." Sophia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me, I need some air." She made it to the stairwell before the tears came, leaning against the concrete wall as 6 weeks of careful confidence crumbled around her. Through the small window, she could see the International District below the neighborhood where families had welcomed her, shared their stories, trusted her with their dreams for a community space that would serve their children and grandchildren. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell, and she wasn't surprised when Marcus appeared on the landing below her. My mother means well, he said quietly. But she's been protecting the Sterling name so long that she sees threats everywhere. Not wrong, though. Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I am underqualified compared to most architects you could have hired. I did get this job because of a personal connection. Now that connection is threatening everything. What we've built is solid, Sophia. Your work stands on its own merit. Does it? She turned to face him. And Marcus saw a vulnerability there that reminded him of their first coffee shop conversation. Because right now it feels like I'm standing on quicksand. One newspaper article and suddenly I'm questioning everything, my designs, my expertise, whether I deserve to be here. Marcus climbed the stairs to her landing. It's close enough now that she could see the frustration and something deeper in his eyes. You want to know what my mother doesn't understand? He said. 6 months ago, I was going through the motions of running a company, funding projects that looked good on paper, but had no soul. Then you walked into my world and reminded me what it means to build something that matters. Not just profitable, meaningful. Marcus, I'm not finished. The voice was gentle, but insistent. You've spent more time in the International District than any architect we've ever worked with. You've sat in living rooms, drinking tea with grandmothers who told you about their grandchildren's dreams. You've sketched designs while 6-year-old Lily explained what makes a playground fun. You understand community because you've lived it. Struggled for it. Fought to create it for your daughter. Sophia felt fresh tears, threatening. But what if that's not enough? What if the planning commission sees the headlines and decides I'm a liability? What if we stop letting fear make decisions for us? Marcus stepped closer, his hands finding hers. What if we trust that good work speaks for itself, regardless of what gossip columnists write? The stairwell door opened above them, and James appeared, his expression urgent. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. David Kim is downstairs in the lobby with a camera crew. He wants to interview both of you about the community center project and your relationship. Security is holding them in the lobby. Marcus and Sophia exchanged glances. The moment of truth had arrived faster than either had expected. What do you want to do? Marcus asked her. Sophia thought about Lily, probably in her kindergarten classroom at that very moment, drawing pictures of buildings and dreaming of becoming an architect like her mama. She thought about the families in the International District who had trusted her with their hopes. She thought about the girl she used to be who had dreamed of building bridges between worlds. I want to tell the truth, she said, straightening her shoulders. About the project, about my qualifications, about the fact that this community center will serve families regardless of what anyone thinks about our personal lives. Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. Then let's go build some bridges. As they walked down the stairs together, Sophia felt something shift inside her chest. Not the absence of fear, she was still terrified, but the presence of something stronger. The kind of courage that came from knowing that some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. The lobby waited below, full of cameras and questions, and the chance to prove that love and hope weren't just philosophical answers, but practical foundations upon which real change could be built. The answer to everything, the Seattle Planning Commission hearing room buzzed with an energy that felt electric and dangerous in equal measure. Sophia stood at the presenter's podium, her hands steady on the microphone as she looked out at the packed gallery. The front row, Marcus sat beside James, his presence a quiet anchor in the sea of faces. 3 rows back, she could see Mrs. Rodriguez holding Lily's hand, her daughter wearing the navy dress they'd picked out together for this special workday. Commissioner Sophia began, her voice carrying clearly through the room. 8 months ago, I walked through the International District as a caterer, invisible to most of the people who lived and worked there. Today, I stand before you as the lead architect for a project that grew from their voices, their needs, their dreams. She clicked to her first slide, not a technical drawing, but a photograph of 8-year-old Chen Wei teaching his grandmother to use a tablet in their cramped apartment. Wei wants to be a computer programmer. His grandmother, Mrs. Chen, immigrated here 30 years ago and still feels disconnected from her community. The Sterling Community Center isn't just about providing space, it's about creating connections between generations, between cultures, between dreams deferred and dreams just beginning. In the audience, David Kim lowered his camera slightly, his professional skepticism giving way to genuine attention. Beside him, Victoria Sterling sat with perfect posture, her expression unreadable, but no longer openly disapproving. Sophia moved through her presentation with growing confidence, each slide telling a story that went beyond blueprints and budgets. She spoke about the flexible community rooms that could host English classes in the morning and cultural celebrations at night, the makerspace where teenagers like 17-year-old Rosa Martinez could learn 3D printing while helping her grandfather repair furniture in the adjacent workshop, the rooftop garden that would provide fresh vegetables for families while teaching children about sustainability. "Some of you may be wondering about my qualifications," she said, addressing the elephant that had followed them into the room. Seattle Times has raised questions about how I came to lead this project, so let me be transparent. Marcus tensed in his seat, unsure what direction she was taking. I am not the most experienced architect in Seattle. I didn't graduate at the top of my class or spend years at prestigious firms. What I am is someone who has lived the life that many of the families in the International District are living. Now, I've chosen between rent and groceries. I've worried about my child's future while working jobs that paid the bills but didn't feed my soul. I understand what it means to need community support, and I understand the difference between spaces that serve and spaces that truly welcome. She clicked to her final slide, the completed community center rendering at sunset, with families walking through the entrance, children playing in the courtyard, elderly couples sitting on benches watching teenagers practice traditional dances. This building represents more than architectural achievement. It represents the belief that everyone deserves spaces designed with love and hope. Not love and hope as abstract concepts, but as practical tools for building community. The room erupted in applause as Sophia concluded, but she barely heard it. Her eyes had found Marcus's, and in his expression she saw pride in something deeper, recognition that went beyond professional admiration. The commission deliberated for exactly 18 minutes. When they returned, Commissioner Patricia Wong spoke for the panel. The International District Community Center project is approved unanimously, with commendations for exceptional community engagement and innovative design integration.
Ow!
The celebration that followed spilled out of the hearing room and onto the sidewalk, where neighbors from the International District mingled with Sterling Technologies, employees, and city officials. Lily raced between groups of adults, her excitement infectious as she told anyone who would listen that Mama designed the best building in the whole world. "You were magnificent in there," Marcus said, finding Sophia in the crowd outside the municipal building. "I've never seen a presentation that powerful." "I had good material to work with," she replied, but her smile faltered slightly. "Marcus, we need to talk about what happens now. The project is approved, but the media attention, your mother's concerns are manageable," he interrupted gently. "Sophia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." Before she could respond, Victoria Sterling appeared at Marcus's shoulder, her approach more hesitant than usual. "Miss Chen," she began, her voice formal but not unkind, "I owe you an apology. I watched your presentation today and I realized I had made assumptions based on incomplete information." Sophia blinked in surprise. "Mrs. Sterling, please, let me finish. I spent 30 years protecting my family's reputation by avoiding risks, by staying within established circles, by choosing safety over possibility." Victoria glanced at her son. "What I failed to understand is that the greatest risk is becoming so insulated that you stop growing, stop learning, stop being challenged by new perspectives." She turned back to Sophia, her expression softer than it had been that morning in the break room. "Your work today demonstrated something I should have recognized earlier, that true qualification isn't just about credentials. It's about understanding the people you serve and having the courage to advocate for them." Lily chose that moment to barrel into the conversation, wrapping her arms around Sophia's legs and beaming up at the adults. "Mama, everyone says you're famous now. Does that mean we can get pizza for dinner?" The laughter that followed broke the remaining tension, and Victoria surprised everyone by crouching down to Lily's level. "I think famous architects definitely deserve pizza," she said solemnly. "In fact, I know an excellent place that delivers." The crowd began to disperse and plans were made for an impromptu celebration. Marcus drew Sophia aside to the steps of the municipal building. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the plaza, and the city hummed with the quiet energy of people heading home to families and dinners and evening rituals. 8 months ago, Marcus said, echoing Sophia's opening words from her presentation, I asked a room full of Seattle's elite what was more valuable than money. Only one person had the courage to answer. Love and hope, Sophia said softly. Love and hope, he agreed. But today I realized I was asking the wrong question. What should you have asked? Marcus took her hands, his thumb tracing across her knuckles with gentle certainty. I should have asked, what makes a life worth living? What makes work worth doing? What makes tomorrow worth building toward? Sophia felt her heart racing, but not with the fear that had carried her through so many recent conversations. This was anticipation, possibility, the feeling of standing on the edge of something beautiful and unknown. And what's your answer? She whispered. The answer is you, Marcus said simply. You and Lily and the community we've built together. The answer is partnership with someone who challenges me to be better, who sees the world with eyes that I'm still learning to use, who reminds me daily that the most important buildings are the ones we construct in our hearts. Around them, Seattle continued its busy evening rhythm, but Sophia felt as if the world had narrowed to just this moment. This man, this question that felt like the beginning of something rather than the end. Mama, Lily's voice cut through the romantic tension as she skipped back up the steps. Mrs. Rodriguez says we're all going for pizza. Can Mr. Marcus come too? What do you think? Sophia asked her daughter, then looked up at Marcus with a smile that held all the love and hope she'd learned to carry. Should we see what tomorrow looks like when we build it together? Marcus scooped Lily up in one arm and wrapped the other around Sophia's waist, pulling them both close as the Seattle skyline glittered around them. Wait, I think, he said, his voice warm with laughter and possibility. That's the best answer to any question I've ever heard. As they walked down the steps together, architect, entrepreneur, and 6-year-old dreamer Sophia realized that some bridges weren't built with steel and stone, but with trust and time and the courage to believe that two different worlds could create something stronger together than either could alone. The community center would rise in the International District, serving families for generations to come. But the real construction project, the one that mattered most, was the life they were building together. One honest conversation and shared dream at a time. Behind them, the municipal building stood solid and permanent against the evening sky, a reminder that some foundations, once properly built, could support anything.